Happy Memorial Day, everybody. It is Monday, May the 30th, and this is an episode of Locked On Cardinals where it's a crossover between me and Javier Reyes of Locked On Padres, where you talk about the season updates for each of these teams, what this series might look like, as well as an interesting discussion on what a Rookie of the Year debate might look like between a couple of rookies on each of these teams. Before we get into the show, I do want to say Happy Memorial Day to everybody. Thank you to everybody who has served, including and especially those men and women who have made the ultimate sacrifice defending our country. With that said, let's get into today's episode of Locked On Cardinals.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily St. Louis Cardinals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the show, Locked On Sports fans. We got Javier Reyes over there. If you're watching on YouTube, that's the host of Locked On Padres. I am Lucas Smith, host of the Locked On Cardinals podcast. It's a crossover edition of our two shows today as the Cardinals and Padres battling it out in the heat of St. Louis in late May, early June. Javi, what's going on, my friend?
Not much, man. If people could see on YouTube, I'm currently wearing this giant blanket over myself right now because I forgot to it's funny because I always record down here and I should have known by now to just bring a jacket or bring something. It's usually, pretty cold in this here library basement that I got behind me, but I'm not this time, but it's okay. I'm walking in feeling like Macklemore in Thrift Shop. I'm feeling myself because the Padres have played pretty good baseball against the Cardinals the past couple of years. And it's funny because unlike most people, I don't have this kind of hatred for the Cardinals for being this boring team. That's like this thing where they're kind of like the Spurs of, to use a basketball reference, of baseball. But I've always been I don't really, because there's other teams to hate. I have a hatred towards the Brewers this year, which should make you happy.
Sure.
Where I'm like, they aren't spending and they're good, and they're like, no, that's cool. We'll get Andrew McCutchen. That's it. Well, the Cardinals find ways to get. I mean, they got Paul Goldschmidt, who I know has been awesome this year. Every single year that people are like, all right, this is the year. This is the year that he finally. All right, this is the year. No, still not doing it. He's been one of the best first basemen in the National League this year. Much better than the Padres' current first base situation, even though he has been pretty good this year. But
I was gonna say,
man, that was a long intro from me. But
I love it. I love it. I know that you won't say his name, so do you mind if I say the name so the Cardinals fans know?
Go for it.
Javier Reyes is, of course, referring to Eric Hosmer, former World Series champion with the Kansas City Royals. That Javi has. I don't want to say a love-hate relationship. It sounds more just like a hate relationship. So we can get into that battle as we go on. But you mentioned the Padres season to start because this first segment we're going to update you on our seasons for our two respective teams here because they've kind of gone in not completely different directions. But I think if you would have asked a Padres fan on March 29th, and I don't know if Tatis was hurt. Well, we'll just say, this time a month ago with Tatis down for the count for a while, playing soccer, not wrapped in bubble wrap as some players might want him to be, being hurt, doing whatever. Yeah. The Padres are in a pretty good position, sans Tatis. And you have to feel good about what they've done for the first month and a half, 2 months here as they sit just 3 games back at the Dodgers as we record on Sunday night. What's your update on the Padres, Javi?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of nailed it. It's heading into the year, there was a lot of bad mojo. It's funny because their mojo kind of went back and forth, right? Because in the offseason, they bring in Bob Melvin, and everyone's like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like, that's not just another extension of the front office. He's been doing great in Oakland. Now he comes here. That's great. And then they do signings of Nick Martinez, who has actually been pretty good for the Padres, but at the time it was like, wow, that's like the only big move they made. It's like, okay, whatever. And then you have the lockout, and then you have the Tatis injury, and then you have the Mania trade. So it's been like very back and forth before the season started. And they're good. Certainly, they've been hitting in really clutch. They have for sure, even if their offense has been largely carried by Manny Machado. I mentioned that the Padres first baseman, he's been pretty okay, actually. He's hitting over 300. He's got a good on base, slowed down a little bit, but he's been a pleasant surprise. But Machado has been the MVP of the I don't really think many people can debate that for the most part. I mean, there's been some really great players Don't get me wrong. But Machado, when you take into account that he has to be this good, had to, with Tatis out, with the rest of the offense not playing well, I think that's what puts him over the top. And then the pitching has been pretty good too. But yeah, the Tatis thing. Yeah, the soccer video. Oh my God.
That was bizarre.
Oh my God. Just seeing him just step on the ball and look like he's going to break his ankle. I'm like, dude, stop, please, man. Just go play video games. Like, it's okay. Like, there's so many things you can do.
Stream on Twitch, just like gain your following. Isn't that
Make sure you
a lot of basketball players do that. Trevor May does that for the Mets. He streams, doesn't he?
I mean, don't pull Will Myers, right? Don't, shit talk your manager live on Twitch. Make sure you don't do that. But otherwise, like, it's really good. I bring up that video as much as I can. It's so funny. Shout out Andy Green.
Yeah, I think that when I think of the Padres, I think of the big hype last year, the classic, Titan-like battles they had with the Dodgers to start the year, and the sweep that they gave the Cardinals early in the year last year. And then you look at this year, or late in the season, rather last year, the Cardinals gave it to the Padres when the Cardinals were on that 17-game winning streak, marching towards the playoffs. And then so many things seem to go wrong from the Padres' perspective, at least from the outside perspective. You mentioned some good things, but that Tatis hit immediately made that contract look terrible. And we don't know how that contract's going to play out. It's a long one, but the Padres to me are an interesting team because that NL West, I think, is playing a lot better than what people thought it was going to be. I think the NL West is looking like what people thought the AL East was going to look like. Because Boston's playing really well right now, but they had a terrible start to their season. Toronto is underperforming. Baltimore is Baltimore. New York is playing really, really well. But they expected 4 teams to play well, not 2. The Reyes and the Yankees. Whereas the NL West, you have 3 teams that are fighting for the division, and you have 4 teams fighting for a playoff spot. Somehow the Rockies are still somewhat in the mix, maybe a little bit, who knows? But you have at least 3 in the Giants, Padres, and Dodgers, right? I think that the Giants it's unbelievable what they're doing and how they still remain relative. But from the Cardinals' perspective, this stretch of baseball right now is one of the most important to date because the Cardinals had 2 home games against Toronto, the 4-game set they just finished up with Milwaukee, and then this 3-game set right now at the Padres. Those are 3 playoff caliber teams, and I'm sure if you talk to people within their system, 3 World Series aspiration teams, right? Especially with the Brewers coming off the NL Central to crown. They're looking for another one. All that good stuff, and the pitching they have is out of this world. But the Cardinals are treading water right now, to be honest with you. They're above 500. They're only 3.5 out of the playoff spot at the time of this recording. So like they're comfortably in the playoffs, don't get me wrong. But they're treading water. Their pitching staff isn't getting enough innings. They seem to only be able to get 2 guys rolling offensively at a time. It's getting better slowly, but it's a real slow process. And from an outside perspective, I appreciate that you don't, but I can see how one might think it would be boring. But I think that this should be an interesting series, and we'll go break it down game by game here in a little bit. But you mentioned Manny Machado and the MVP caliber season he's having. Nolan Arenado has certainly cooled off, and recency bias might play a part in this. But I wanted to ask you, where do you fall in the Machado versus Arenado debate? Now that Machado is, a third baseman and he does that, where do you fall in that debate?
It's funny because Padres Twitter, man, you want to get them riled up. No, they hate Nolan Arenado, and I
wonder why.
It's because. So here's the thing: there have been a couple times when I was like, I think Player of the Month this past month was a good example, right? Where I think Manny Machado basically outpaced him in a lot of categories, and if you take into account what I mentioned about how this team specifically really needed him with all the collapse and without Tatis, that it was a little bit weird to see Arenado get the reward over him, but. For the most part, I have always looked at it as, guys, Nolan Arenado is a stud. I mean, I think he's won a Gold Glove every single year of his career. It's not like to Justin Turner, who is a really good player, but he's not Manny Machado or Nolan Arenado, right? He's not losing it. He's losing out to an all-star Hall of Fame caliber guy. He wins the Gold Glove literally every season. He's awesome, right? And I know that last year he was a very, very home run guy. He drove in a lot of RBIs, but his on base left a lot to be desired. This year, he's been improving a lot. I've never fully understood that. It's not like you're losing to some scrub. Like, it's fine. Right. I understood this past month though. I come down on the fact of Nolan Arenado is awesome to play defense. He's maybe hasn't had as many moments. He hasn't had as many and part of that's because he's played with the Rockies, right? Like, this isn't a guy who's played a lot of playoff ball. I think that that's part of it, right? I think that's part of the reason that maybe not everybody knows about him, but obviously he's on this Cardinals team, so that should do wonders for him. I'm fine with the guy. I know that the Padres fans will like me hearing that, want me to probably trash the guy, but he's really good. This isn't losing out to when Cronenworth lost out to Gavin Lux for All-Star voting last year, right? Like this is okay. I'm perfectly cool with it. And I know he had that fun moment earlier this year with the fight, which was pretty wild.
Goodness gracious. Yeah, I don't know. I love Arenado. The fight that he has in him is great. Like, that's awesome. And we can go on a whole other tangent about this. I thought that moment on both sides, the Mets and the Cardinals, was overdone. Nobody likes getting hit in the head. I'm sure that 80-mile-an-hour changeup to Alonso didn't feel good, right? No. There's a changeup, got away. The Mets get hit all the time. I feel like that's more, they're the common denominator in all these issues. They're the ones getting hit.
That's true.
But anyway,
it's weird though. It's weird, right? Like how much they've been hit more than any other team. Yeah.
More from Javier and I in just a moment, but first I want to tell you about our new partner that I use every day because it is making my life better, and that is Athletic Greens AG1. So what is this stuff? It's easy because it's with one delicious scoop of AG1, you're going to absorb 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, focus, recovery, aging, everything. It's incredible, it's healthy, and it's lifestyle friendly. Whether you eat keto, vegan, dairy-free, gluten-free, it is friendly to all those lifestyles. It contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting good. And it's going to cost you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than that cold brew habit of yours. You're investing in an all-in-one nutritional insurance, and right now it is time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. With just 1 scoop of cup of water a day, there's no need for different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy for you, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/MLB network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/MLB network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
100%. I think it's the Cardinals are one of those teams that it wouldn't surprise me if they're one of those unwritten rule type of belief teams, but they also strike me as a team that's too smart to even care about it right now. They're like, you know what? You know what I mean? Like they don't like it, but they're like, that's an extra base runner. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that might be the type of philosophy they have.
I think last year you're definitely right, but I mean, yesterday or Saturday they were up 8-0 against the Brewers, and they had a bunt single against the shift. So I'm sure that Texas Ranger manager didn't like it, whatever his name is.
Yeah, Woodward.
But Woodward, yeah, there you go. But anyways, to jump back to the Arenado Machado discussion to give my 2 cents on it, I think they're both great players. I'm not a huge fan of Machado as a person. I don't know, the stuff he did with Los Angeles in the World Series or in the National Series against Milwaukee never sat right with me. But I had an issue with a friend of mine recently about the All-Star discussion this year between Arenado and Machado. It's early. It's still May, June, depending on when you all are listening or watching to this. But that's an interesting discussion because Machado definitely has been dominating for longer, right? But they both are going to be All-Stars. It's just my question is who starts. I think that fan voting is ridiculous. I'm not a huge fan of fan voting, but I think because that to me is a more interesting discussion. They've both been dynamite for their team. Machado definitely has needed to more, like you mentioned, but it's not like the Cardinal offense has been scoring 10 runs a game. They especially early on, they needed Arenado, maybe not to the extent that the Padres needed Machado, but who starts in the All-Star game at third base for the National League? Yeah. 1-sentence answer, go.
I think it's Machado. There feels like he's having the moment season. I think people have been waiting for him he's always been capable of an MVP season, hasn't quite put that together before. Not that he's been bad or disappointing by any stretch, just consistently good. Maybe that will put him over the top, but you do have a good point. I mean, I've always defended the hustle narrative. I think that's stupid when they bring it up with Manny, but like you alluded to with the Brewers series, that stuff is earned. Unfortunately on his part, he's been fine with his tenure with the Padres, seems to put a lot of that behind him, but I do understand the hatred of him for that aspect of his game. The hustle stuff doesn't make any sense. But with with the fan voting, yeah, I could see it. It just feels like I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of vibes to being like Machado's finally doing it. Imagine when Tatis gets back, maybe he'll edge out the fan voting, or people really just don't like the guy and they're going to be like, no, screw it, we're putting Nolan Arenado first.
Yeah, I don't know. Machado's having a fantastic year, and he's going to have a good series this against St. Louis. So let's go ahead and get into the game by game. You know, they play on Memorial Day on Monday. Packy Naughton getting the start for the Cardinals. Great name. Pitching, it leaves a little bit to be desired. What can you tell me about Martinez, who gets the start on Monday? I know you're releasing this on Tuesday, but for me on Monday, what can you tell me about Martinez?
So hopefully in my praise of him, I won't look silly by the time this is over. I will say with Martinez, I famously I took back some of my initial thoughts on when they signed him, which I didn't get. Like, I just liked Alex Cobb, I liked Alex Wood, I liked Tyler Anderson, Andrew Heaney, I liked some other guys better. But with Nick Martinez, when you take into account that he's a 5 or 6 starter on this team, I think he's been excellent. Just based on ERA, it's below 4, which is which is better than some other guys. You know what I mean? On this team that have a little bit more of a name rep, like your Sean Manaea, for example. I think Yu Darvish is slightly lower than him right now at 3.76. But with Martinez, what I'd say you should know about him, he's got some fire to him for sure, just in terms of passion and intangibles and stuff like that. And I would say his changeup is filthy. I mean, this is Chris Paddock 2019 level of a changeup. Hitters are batting like 120 or some. I probably should have looked this up beforehand, but hitters are batting really poorly against it. If you want to go by run value, they can't really hit it either. So he's been really good. And that's what's been interesting is, as a guy who's got this really dominant one pitch, and he's got a couple others that he throws too, the fact that his changeup is so lethal, I've been interested to see if the full rotation is healthy, whether or not he really could help serve for this Padres bullpen that's been really shaky to start the year, which is definitely the weakness of the team that gets a little bit forgotten because the starting pitching has been so good. But yeah, I'd say that Martinez, solid pitcher. Definitely don't. He's a solid pitcher. That's the bottom line. He's pretty good, especially as a back end guy. And considering past pitchers that the Padres have had, Jake Arrieta maybe last year, Vince Velasquez as the back of their rotation guys. You could go and pass in 2015. You could go years before that. Pretty good. Pretty good guy. Just not an ace, certainly, the way Mackenzie Gore has been pitching. Definitely a little bit of a break for the Cardinals to start.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking off air that, I'm sad from the standpoint that I don't get to see Gore pitch, right? Because, it's a talent. But at the same time, I'm okay. I'll survive.
I'm good.
I'll catch a late coast game on MLB Network one of these nights. I'll be okay.
Yeah.
But from a Cardinals standpoint on Monday, they're sending out lefty Packy Naughton. He's only thrown 9 innings this year, 9 1/3 innings. He's got 1 start underneath his belt. This Cardinal team right now, Javi, they are desperate for innings. I mean, when Dallas Keuchel got DFA'd over the weekend by the White Sox, Cardinal Twitter was like, I feel like the Cardinals are going to sign Dallas Keuchel. So, like that's how desperate they are. Like they're looking, like and that's similar to the J.A. Happ, John Lester type moves they made last trade deadline. So if by the time this episode is released, the Cardinals have signed Dallas Keuchel, won't be shocked. Just putting that out there. But that's why Naughton's getting a start, is because of the need of innings for this team and the injury to Steven Matz. Matthew Liberatore was called up to replace him, and Liberatore gave them 5 solid innings on Saturday. That was fun to see. But at the end of the day, this is still a rotation that is down. Jordan Hicks also went down to the injured list. Jake Woodford thought that he might be getting the start, but he pitched 3 innings on Saturday. So Naughton gets the ball for St. Louis. If he goes more than 4 innings, that's a win in my book. He needs to go 5 or 6, right? But if he goes more than 4 innings, that's a win. Naughton might not have a Martinez-level changeup, but he does have a pretty solid changeup when he is right from the left side. So we'll look for that changeup to be successful. Hopefully, as a lefty, he can neutralize your Hall of Fame or your really good first baseman and Hosmer.
Very funny.
But anyway, so for the next couple of days, Tuesday and Wednesday, right now, it's TBD. Listen on MLB.com for the San Diego Padres. And we understand by the time this is listened to or watched, starters might be announced or what have you. Yeah. But where do you envision the Padres going with these next 2 starts?
It's probably going to be Darvish for one of them for sure. And Darvish has been a little bit.
Make a different choice. Make a different choice.
What's wrong with my boy Yu? What's going on?
I don't want the Cardinals to face Yu Darvish. What do you mean? What's wrong?
I mean, he hasn't been incredible. I'll say that much.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, this
he dominates
an
the Cardinals,
incredible guy.
He dominates the
Yeah.
Cardinals.
That is true. That is a good point with Darvish. But I do want to ask you now.
Yeah.
First of all, it's just baseball BS luck. Y'all lucky you're playing in the NL Central. Steven Matz goes out and throws 3 pitches. And I remember you messaging the Locked On group chat. For the record, I have Steven Matz in my very deep fantasy league, and I start him only against the bad teams. But they come out, he throws 3 pitches, and then those goddamn Pittsburgh Pirates, man, they do not disappoint you. The Cardinals win by like 14. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Come on, you can't even beat them up a little bit. Their starter threw 3 pitches, and you were like, oh man, the bullpen's gassed. Of course, they dominate the game.
Yep, Rondon throws 5, and McFarland goes 3.
Rondon, making him look like Nolan Ryan out here. I mean, it's just But I will say, to lead up to the question, which is, you signed Steven Matz in the offseason. You have 40-year-old Wainwright, and you're hoping that, what is it, Hudson? I forgot his name already.
Yep, he'll go Wednesday. Yep. Dakota
you
Hudson.
got Hudson. Yeah, Miles Michaelis, these okay starters and whatnot. Is there a feeling, especially considering, and I know you probably get this all the time, but for my listeners, they should probably hear your perspective. In a stacked free agent class, they go out and they don't sign anyone. Not really. You didn't get a Cobb. You didn't even get those back end of the rotation guys. You got Matz, but you're seeing right now, like you said, treading water. Maybe they got really fortunate they were playing the Pirates when Steven Matz got hurt. What is kind of the vibe there? Do you think they should have gone out for another starter, or is there some farm stuff that I don't necessarily know about? Or are they contenders for Frankie Montas over of Oakland or Luis Castillo? What's kind of the feeling over there?
If they want Luis Castillo, they might have to give up Gorman, an arm, and a leg, and that's not because I don't see the Reds trading him in division. But hindsight's always 20/20. Cardinals Twitter might tell you the Cardinals are in on Montas. I know that maybe it was John Heyman or Joel Sherman reported that he was on the market, and that teams like the Cardinals could be interested. That was a name drop by a reporter. This team needs innings. I said from the get-go, I loved the Steven Matz trade. Or the acquisition, the signing. It was a good move. He was a good fit, all those things. But it wasn't going to win the offseason unless you paired it with other moves, which the Cardinals weren't able to do. They got Albert. That was a big PR success. Corey Dickerson has turned into an awful signing after the first 2 months. Verhagen has been a bust. Whitgren has had his moments, but overall a bust, right? This team needs innings. That's why I mentioned I wouldn't be surprised if they get Keuchel. I was overly probably optimistic with this pitching staff. I think this bullpen is really good. I think that we could see the bullpen shine, and we have at times, but we're also seeing when your starters average anywhere from 4 to 5 innings a start, the bullpen shows weaknesses more often than it should because you're pitching Giovanni Gallegos 2 nights in a row, Helsley 3, all these different things. I would like to see them be in on Montas, but the Cardinals have proven they're not giving up the farm to do it. This farm system is top heavy, with Gorman, Liberatore, Herrera, and Walker at the top, not in that order. Walker's the number 1 prospect. So none of those 4 are moving unless you're getting an unreal return. Maybe if they go after Juan Soto, which they're not, just for the record, but that's the kind of name it would require, in my mind, for them to give up that kind of prospect. And I think Montas, the A's might be wanting that kind of prospect. They might want a top 5 prospect. And I don't think the Cardinals are willing to give up on their top, especially now that 3 of them have seen Major League time. 2 of them will regularly see Major League time in Gorman and Liberatore. They're just not going to do it. They're too high on these prospects. If they do go out and get a starter, it's going to be a Keuchel's type starter. It's going to be a John Lester, J.A. Happ type starter. It works to a degree, but a lot of times you don't see World Series contenders acquiring 38, 39-year-old starters or pitchers that were just DFA'd over the weekend.
Yeah.
So that's where it stands on the pitching standpoint. And Wainwright has been fine. Hudson has been okay, but he needs to start showing it. The innings, it's going to be a problem. The Cardinals have a 5-game series with the Cubs over the weekend. That's going to be a glorious time, seeing how they decide to cover 5 games in 4 days.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. It should be interesting. You're right, especially for World Series contenders and whatnot. It's just not a good vibe. I mean, I just told you about Arrieta and Velasquez, trying to go, bargain bin diving and whatnot to try and find guys.
Before we get to our last talking point, I think we have a really interesting discussion talking about some rookies. Rookie of the year. It's early, but we got some contenders on both teams, right? Let's finish the discussion on the 3-game set. You and I feel like every time we do a crossover, We always say this: baseball is so hard to predict, right?
Yeah.
It's weird. You've got 314 feet home run. All these weird things can happen in a game. But with the way that the Padres are playing, coming off a walk-off win against Pittsburgh, with the motivation of, hey, the Dodgers are playing the Pirates and we're 3 games back, we need to perform this week against St. Louis, right? With how the pitching lines up, maybe we'll see Darvish. Who knows? Where do you see the Padres? How do you see the Padres performing this week against the Cardinals?
I see them performing okay. It depends because they're, and this is also, you mentioned that it's been a really important, stretch for the Cardinals. It's been a really important stretch for the Padres starting now too, because they just finished up a series against the Brewers. Then they played the Pirates. Now they have the Cardinals, then the Brewers again, and then the Mets. So it's a tough stretch for them. So we're going to have to see. I mean, those are some of the best teams in baseball right there, especially with the Mets, right? I mean, they've been dominant. Shout out Francisco Lindor. My boy, Papi. I mean, everybody doubted Vamonos. I mean, he had one down year. He stinks now. Idiots everywhere. But anyway, look, when my current shortstop Tatis isn't healthy, I'm going to praise Lindor as much as I can. But I will say, with this upcoming series, they do play the Cardinals well. That is true. And with Darvish, who seems to own the Cardinals, I think they can play well. And I do have to admit, it's a good time to catch the Cardinals. I know Tyler O'Neill's hurt. You said Nolan Arenado's cooled off just a little bit. I am worried about Goldschmidt, as always. He was good in the playoffs against us 2 seasons ago. I guess one quick question before we continue, though. I'm wondering, Tommy Edman, what has he done? Because he's always, I mean, this Cardinals team, the problem with them, right, is that they've just got gold gloves at quite literally every position. But when Tommy Edman, it looked defensive specialist who can steal bags. And don't get me wrong, steal quite a few bags. He's valuable in fantasy baseball. But this year, I mean, with his slash line, he's got like a 360 on base. He's hitting 279 with a 360 on base, and even smacks a couple home runs every now and then. What has changed about him significantly? Is it legit, or is this just like kind of a fun little Owen Miller of Cleveland or a Yerman Mercedes of last year type of he'll regress back to being a good player, but not this incredible of a bat?
I think it's more legit because we saw this his rookie year in 2019. He hit over 300 that year. I think the last couple of years have just been kind of down for him. The Cardinals have been adamant in their confidence of Tommy Edman. Really, what's changed is that he's hit from the left side, which he didn't do even last year. I don't think he'll be a 320 hitter. Don't get me wrong, but he could be a 280 hitter, 350, 360 on base, as you mentioned, pop a couple home runs here and there, especially from the right side. That's where most of his power is at. But he's basically been able to be a threat from the left side and not just roll over to second base every now and again. I think you have some experience with somebody who just likes to hit ground balls to second base. I forget who, but we'll leave that unsaid. But no, I think Edman has hit more line drives than usual, or than he has in the past, and has learned to hit from the left side more consistently. That's been a huge key for him.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and that's just what this team needed, especially with, I mentioned O'Neill, and he was also struggling before he even got hurt. Dylan Carlson struggling before he got hurt. It's been kind of up and down Cardinals offense for sure. It feels like, but Edman has been awesome, and I have him in one of my leagues as well. So shout out to Tommy Edman. And I guess in terms of, to get back to the overall thing though, I have trouble picking series because you would look at this and say, all right, the Cardinals, the one game the Padres will win will be the Darvish start, and then they'll lose the Martinez start, and then it's a toss-up on whatever the heck we get out of Blake Snell. Be probably the starter for Wednesday's game or Tuesday's game, one of those two. I forgot the exact plans with that. Padres have changed up their rotation a couple times.
Sure.
But with Snell, it's just a little bit too early. I don't know. He just came off the IL. He's only had 2 starts, really. He gave up 3 technically. It was a bullpen guy who gave up the big hits, but the runners were charged to him. I don't know. So we don't know exactly what we're getting there. What's going to happen is that the Padres will get swept, or more importantly, the Darvish start will be the one that the Cardinals win by 9, and then the Padres will win the Martinez start by 8. Right? That's what could happen. So I would say look out for that, though. I'd just say look out for the Snell start is going to be the most interesting, probably out of the bunch, just because he's new, he's fresh off the IL for the most part, and this will be a really tough team that takes smart at bats. Yep. Even though, like you said, maybe if you could get past that starting pitching, the bullpen's been working a little bit. Helsley has been a little bit of a revelation for the team this year. Gallego's has been good.
Yeah.
My brother Alex Reyes, obviously on the IL, so we won't have to face him. We'll see, man. We'll see. I'm excited though. I think that the Cardinals are just, if you're a super baseball nerd, it's a fun team to play against, fun team to witness, and just crunch the numbers and all these Gold Glovers that they have. I mean, that could come in handy for a Padres team that has been not hitting for power. Not hitting surefire hits. They've been kind of getting some bloop singles and even playing off some bad defense every now and then. Probably not going to happen most likely against this Cardinals defense with all their great defenders.
No, you're going to see some good defense all week. And I think that it's easy for me right now, honestly, Javi, to say that the Cardinals lose 2 out of 3 this week because of the Naughton start and because Dakota Hudson has been, hit or miss, and most of the time miss. He has struggled this year. I will say, if when Snell does get a start, the Cardinals hit left-handed pitching really, really well. So I'm excited for the Blake Snell start to a degree because you'll see Albert in the lineup, and gotta love seeing Pujols in the lineup. But real quick, we are running short on time. I want to get to the Rookie of the Year discussion. Yeah. I'll talk about my 2 or 3, and I want you to talk about Mackenzie Gore and what he's done this year, real quick.
Mackenzie Gore. He's been awesome this year. Duh. I froze up there for a second. And you know what else? He's been freezing up hitters this year. Let me tell you. The fastball plays, man. And I was a little bit worried his first couple starts just because he was almost exclusively throwing the fastball. But after you're like 5-6 starts in and hitters still aren't hitting it, fastball is just good. He can locate it, especially up and inside, up and away. The top corners, he can get those called strikes big time with the fastball. A little bit faster than Nestor Cortez, but has that vibe to it where it rises, and he's just so confident in it. So, yes, rookie fastballs, that's what he throws the most from a rookie. Oh, please, we can hit that. Not this guy. His velo ticked up before the season. He's been throwing hard, and in his past bunch of starts, throwing more off-speed stuff. So he's been he's been awesome. And I think that, and I talked about this on yesterday's episode on my feed, which is that it's a great reminder of how much we vacillate back and forth as fans, where this is the number one pitching prospect in 2020. For good reasons, falls off, and then he comes back. And I mean, some people had him off their top 100s entirely. And it's like, well, that's a little bit much, right? I get him falling off a little bit because of his lack of control in the minors and when he reached the AAA level, but he's been back. He's been awesome and clearly the front runner for the NL Rookie of the Year so far. Although, and I imagine you're going to talk about it in a second, there are some guys in the Cardinals that wouldn't shock me if they sneak into the discussion, especially because they're position players. And position players are usually going to have more of a weight in these awards races than pitchers.
Yeah, the Cardinals have a couple. Obviously, you've got the names of Matthew Liberatore or Nolan Gorman, right? They're the highly touted prospects that people think, but so far, the people putting up numbers are Juan Yepez, Brendan Donovan, and honestly, I'll throw in a picture here for good measure, Andre Palante. Remarkable career or year so far, minimal ERA and a lot of innings. So those 3 guys, to me, are they going to be front runners for the entire year? Probably not. They're probably going to be one of those guys that you have to try and convince people that they're going to be a Rookie of the Year. Like, Gore probably doesn't take too much convincing, right? You say the name, you talk about the prospects, you talk about that's not going to take too much convincing. If I told you Juan Yepez's name before this show, would you have known who he was?
Nope.
Right, exactly. So you're going to have to convince people, or convince that they're going to be deserving. They put up some good numbers. Yepez has had a couple big moments. Got 4 home runs, I believe. He's shown the ability to readjust once the league adjusts. Brendan Donovan always puts together a great at bat. Rarely strikes out. Somebody that can play all over the diamond as well. And Andre Palante has just been nails out of that Cardinal bullpen. He could be a starter in the future, but I would not be surprised if 2 or 3 of the top 5 rookies this season come from the Cardinals or Padres. Obviously, you've got Suzuki over in Chicago that's going to put up some numbers, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Cardinals and Padres are well represented in Rookie of the Year voting come November, whenever those awards are announced. But that's a long ways away. We got a long season to go. Memorial Day being Monday. That's when this is being released for me, releasing tomorrow for y'all. So happy Memorial Day to everybody. Thank you to all those who've served, and the condolences and thoughts to everybody who has lost their life defending this country as well. But Javi, this is always fun. The playoff picture starts to get formed a little bit more concretely around Memorial Day. So we'll see what the Cardinals and Padres can do to increase or decrease ground in their playoff battles. Before we leave, Javi, why don't you tell my listeners where they can find you and your work?
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at Javapeno, which I am pointing my head to right now on the YouTube, JAVIIPENO, and then at LO_Padres, where I live tweet the games most often. Probably going to be doing that for a lot of the games this week, especially since they're early and I won't have to go to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever it is, right? So that'll be really fun. And then check out Just Baseball, great website. That's where I write, and you can find my writing and stuff. And that's basically it. Probably going to talk about Musgrove this week as well, and the potential extension, because I know that's what's on everybody's mind for a guy that's probably top 5 in Cy Young voting if you did it today. So that should be fun.
Good to know, Javi. I appreciate it. And for your listeners and for any first-time listeners on my feed, you can find me on Twitter right down there. If you're watching on YouTube, at LJ Fastball, which is ironic because I didn't have a fastball in high school. I had a cutter, but LJ Fastball sounds cool.
How about
that? You can also find the show on Twitter and Instagram at LO_Cardinals. Email the show anytime at lockedoncards@gmail.com. Thank you for tuning in today. Whenever you tune in, thank you for making it your first listen of the day. Be sure to listen to Locked On MLB with our pal Sully next. And until we talk to you guys the next time, be sure to stay safe, stay well, and have a fantastic rest of your day.